Good afternoon and good morning. Welcome everyone. So welcome to How to Tame a Stochastic Parrot. I shall now pass the word to Dorian Selt, Squirrel's co-founder and CEO.
Good afternoon, good morning in Asia and here in Europe. Thank you for joining us this morning on this webinar. All of us were taken aback a few months ago with the advent of ChatGPT, and all of us are asking ourselves, is this the moment? Is this the moment where we have the equivalent of what happened with Google some 25 years ago? That came onto the scene and drastically changed everything, like a big bang. It made the internet popular. Is ChatGPT making AI popular? 25 years ago, it was like this, Alta Vista. Some of us remember that still. They clocked to many items on a page search engine where everybody said, actually, search is dead. Alta Vista owns it. Came along Google and killed it. Nobody realized at the time what revolution Google would initiate and actually what business model Google eventually would have. But it changed everything. So these days, everything is about ChatGPT growing faster than TikTok. It is the hype cycle literally breaking every record. It is the generative AI moment. It is all of these breathless headlines like an MBA exam passed by AI, or is ChatGPT the tipping point for AI? To me, it is incredible what speed of adoption it had over the past weeks and months. Literally 5 days to a million users. But you also saw this. Google bungles the AI reveal. There were incorrect predictions about the Webb telescope. The Microsoft Bing search chatbot effectively giving unhinged answers. And a bit of a backlash there as well. As an example, JP Morgan restricting staff's use of AI-powered chatbots already now, literally 2 months after seeing its prime light. So I ask myself, is this all of Gartner hype cycle from the trigger all the way to peak inflation, delusionment, and the plateau of productivity pushed into literally 3 months? All of this is part of today's webinar where we ask ourselves, is generative AI a new era of machine learning, and how does it impact businesses? How does it impact you here on this call today?
So generative AI is a foundational technology with extensive capabilities that are going to expand the runway on top-line growth in many sectors dramatically. Throughout the webinar, we will forefront the powerful enterprise opportunities that the technology creates and how you can widely profit from it in a safe manner. Our machine learning engineer will set the scene for us today by introducing a key term and answering a core question. What are large language models? This fundament will lead us nicely onto the actual application of large language models in an enterprise and the considerations and benefits that accompany this. Our team will then exemplify this usability with a live demo of SquirrelBot before we proceed to sharing our survey results around generative AI's actual usability in an enterprise environment, having received feedback from decision makers across the US, EMEA, and APAC. To end the session, we'll open the floor to any questions you may have. So let's start at the beginning with us. Who are we? Squirrel is the leading semantic enterprise search and insights application provider. We were founded in 2012 and have a growing global presence in London, Munich, New York, and Singapore. We are ISO 27001 certified and industry recognized by analysts like Gartner and Forrester, with successive recognition as a Magic Quadrant visionary on the Insights Engine in 2021 and 22. We have an array of global customers in different sectors that include the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, Standard Chartered Bank, Henkel, Indicia, Armacell, amongst others. So let's look at the panel today who will be helping us discover everything. So our panel today is populated with a collection of experienced individuals. that will allow us to really explore this topic from an array of angles. We have our Squirrel CEO and co-founder Dorian Seltz, our CTO Sarah Jane, and one of our senior machine learning engineers, Thomas Diggleman. As an addition, myself, Lauren Hawker-Zaffer, is the head of training and education at Squirrel. A little bit about us. So incorporating generative AI has been in our DNA for quite a while now. In 2022, we integrated extractive question answering into our search offerings and published our fine-tuned models on Hugging Face for open source use. So in keeping with our strengths, we move to the first question: what are large language models and what are their powers and pitfalls? To find this out, I will ask our senior machine learning engineer, Thomas, to take over.
Thanks, Lauren, for the generous introduction. And let's jump to the question that many of you might be asking now: what are large language models, or LLMs for short? Many people are familiar with HAL 9000, the unsettling artificial intelligence from Kubrick's masterpiece 2001: A Space Odyssey. Some may ask the question, should we be concerned about encountering similar issues with the widespread of these large language models? Not really, because in the end, it's all just mathy math. But even though large language models do not possess the same level of autonomy, advanced robotics, and decision-making capabilities as HAL in the movie, they still pose unique challenges that we will explore throughout this webinar. LLMs are statistical models that process enormous amounts of text data to detect patterns and connections between words, phrases, and also higher order relations. These models are highly versatile and can be applied to a wide range of natural language processing tasks. For instance, they can be utilized in generative tasks such as machine translation, summarization, and chatbots, as you can see on the left-hand side of this slide. And additionally, they can be used for spell checking, classification, named entity recognition, which are all examples of discriminative models. Now, at the heart of large language models is the prediction of probability distributions for word sequences. For instance, if a model has been trained on a vast collection of English text, it may assign a higher probability to a particular sentence, let's say Stephanie enjoys walking at the beach, because it contains a sequence of words that is more common. For example, with respect to Stephanie enjoys walking in the trampoline. However, it's important to note that the model's assessment is not based on a symbolic comprehension of the sentence's meaning, but rather on the likelihood of that particular sentence appearing as observed from the training corpus. The generative aspect really started to shine recently with the advent of conversational demonstrations such as ChatGPT, and now its multimodal successor, GPT-4. In this setting, the next word is predicted based on the observed sequence, or an input image as in GPT-4. LLMs are trained on a really enormous amount of text data and feature impressive fluency in the produced texts. But fundamentally, they still play the good old guess the next word game, as in the example on the slide, where you have Peter likes to eat as input sentence, and you could, for example, predict chocolate as a likely next token. LLMs have two primary abilities: language modeling and knowledge retrieval through associative memory. Language modeling is a versatile tool for various tasks, and knowledge retrieval is an almost unintentional side effect. However, compressing vast amounts of information into an LLM also has its drawbacks. Approximate information reproduction can result in inaccuracies or downright fabricate the content, and LLMs can't even detect when they're hallucinating. This can lead to severe consequences in practical applications. Furthermore, LLMs inhibit biases from their training data, and their black box nature makes it really challenging to trace how answers are generated and on what grounds. Now ask yourself, how this might affect businesses. How to apply this now in practice and in an enterprise setup? Let's take this to Saurabh.
Thanks a lot, Thomas, for the interesting insights into the large language models. Hello, everyone. Are you all ready to learn about how to leverage LLMs in your own enterprise? Well, let's dive in. First, let's talk about the problems with the proverbial stochastic parrot, which makes it unsuitable for enterprise applications. It hallucinates, it only sees the public data, and it does not respect privacy. Now, you might be wondering, what does all of this mean? Let me show you a few examples. To demonstrate the hallucination problem, let's ask our beloved ChatGPT, who is Dorian Sells. As you can see, looking at the answer, the first paragraph has all the right facts, like he is the CEO at Squirrel. But the subsequent paragraphs are completely hallucinated and not at all correct. He does not have a PhD in natural language processing from University of Geneva. And what makes it even worse is that the answers are actually quite believable, as Dorian does have a PhD but from a different university. Moreover, there is no transparency as to where the answers are retrieved from. This is a no-go in an enterprise. Now, let's move on to the second challenge of no access to internal data. To showcase this, I asked ChatGPT, how did Dorian meet Patrice? This is obviously a very private question, and as expected, ChatGPT does not know the answer without any additional context. If you are interested in the answer, then stay tuned. Of course, that's a very personal example, and in your enterprise setup, the actual question might look something like this. What is my total contract value for contract at Standard Chartered Bank? And as expected, without the internal data, you are greeted with a similar response. This is again a no-go in an enterprise setup, as majority of the data that you will be dealing with will be your internal data. Moving on to the third challenge, that is enterprise security, a major concern for any enterprise deployment. Enterprise security has many different facets, but the one that we would like to really highlight here is the access control rules. How do you really make sure that such a model only generates the answers which your end users are allowed to see? Now that we have highlighted the three key problems with using this technology, what we need to do is to make it usable for an enterprise setup. We believe that we need to keep the Parrot grounded to reality. We need to feed the Parrot with your internal data, and we need to make the Parrot understand your rules and regulations. And this is not an easy problem to solve. Other industry leaders in the domain think also that it is a hard nut to crack. Here is the chief scientist of Meta, Jan LeCun, mentioning that marrying tools like LLMs with search engines is highly non-trivial. Now, you might be wondering, how can we address these challenges and make them usable for your enterprise? Let me show you how we approach this problem. We embrace the LLMs with both its flaws and strengths. We ensure that the LLMs have access to local context and can be fine-tuned on your internal data. And finally, we make sure that we always put the end users in the driving seat by adopting a transparent and evidence-driven approach to the problem. To show how providing local context and evidence can help answer questions from your internal data, let me head back to one of the previous questions from earlier. How did Dorian meet Patrice? But this time around, we have provided ChatGPT with some additional context highlighted here, manually extracted from Dorian's private notes. And as you can see, that using this additional context, ChatGPT can generate the right answer to the question, that is, Dorian met Patrice at a Christmas celebration a long time ago. Sounds easy, right? All we need to do is provide the right context and ChatGPT does the rest. But how many context documents do you need to provide? How long these documents should be? How do you find the right documents for your questions in your vast private data repositories? And how do you really ensure that LLMs actually use that supplied context? This is where Skuro comes in. our information retrieval pipeline developed over the last decade helps answer these questions. We extract the relevant context documents from your data based on the query and use those to generate the right answers for you. Now, let me show you how we put the end users in the driving seat by providing explainable, transparent answers. Answers coming out of our solution are always cited using the context retrieved from your data with the possibility to go back to the original source in your system. And when we do not find the right answers and right data for your query, we will tell you that transparently. You will see all of that in action shortly in our demo. As you remember from Likun's post from earlier, that marrying LLMs with the search engine is not trivial. Here you see the top level diagram of our approach to marry the LLMs with Squirrel's information retrieval stack. As the question comes into our system, we leverage the LLMs in our dialog manager to maintain a dialogue with the user. This allows users to continue to ask follow-up questions in their natural language without specifying the full context every single time. After reformulating this question, we leverage Squirrel's information retrieval engine to retrieve the right relevant documents for your data. These retrieved documents already respect the enforced access rights for the user, ensuring that we do not expose any sensitive content to the LLM in the context of the question. Grounding the LLMs with the relevant documents is very crucial to generate a good answer. Hence, this is a very crucial step of the process, one that benefits immensely from our experience in information retrieval for the last decade. After the retrieval of the relevant documents, we send the relevant snippets from these documents to the LLM back to generate a summarized answer. Here, we also use the prompt engineering to keep the LLM focused on the task. Once we get the answers back from the LLM, we do additional quality checks, including whether the LLM is hallucinating the answer or not. Additionally, at this step, we would also link the answer to the source document to ensure proper transparency and legal compliance. And finally, the answers would be transported back to the users. As a final note on the enterprise security, Squirrel's information retrieval stack supports proper access control handling with both early binding and late binding strategies. And now I hope that was not too boring for you. So now let me hand it over back to Thomas to show the SquirrelBot in action in an exciting demo.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Saurabh. But I still need you. I need you to type in the questions that we now are going to show in the demo. So let's dive in. Let's assume I'm an account executive and I need to prepare my next meeting related to Microsoft. So can we ask SquirrelBot to show some news about Microsoft?
So let me ask, tell me something about Microsoft.
Lots of information about Microsoft and I guess its products. But actually, I'm more interested into their Teams product. So let's ask a follow-up question. Are there any other news around Teams? Cool. SquirrelBot realized that this question was about Teams in the context of Microsoft. I can see that Microsoft launches a new version with additional improvements. But how can we trust this information in light of the problems of, for example, LLM hallucinations? So please press on the Show Evidence button. As you can see here, the answer produced by SquirrelBot comes with context information from your data. You can also click on the evidence. And by clicking this button, we will see the most relevant snippets extracted from the data using Squirrel's information retrieval. Moreover, the most relevant one was highlighted before in yellow color. And this allows us to transparently follow where the information is coming from, thanks to the evidence-based methodology powered by Squirrel's information retrieval. But the skeptic in some of you might make you wonder how what you saw before is different from asking with Bing or U.com. we will probably get similar answers there, right? Note that what you've seen and interacted with on these sites is publicly available information. But you are all here because you want to know how this works with your own private data. In order to showcase this, we have taken the data from our live Confluence system, which is our internal wiki, and ingested it into the Squirrel bot. So how about we head over to our internal chat now? And let me show you a small example from our internal wiki. Let's assume again that as a new engineer at Squirrel, I would like to go on vacation. So let's ask Squirrelbot, what is the vacation policy? Okay, I can see that it retrieved the right content, but I'm now much too lazy to read through all of it. So let's see if Squirrelbot can narrow it down for me. I will ask a follow-up question based on the already retrieved content. How much in advance do we have to request for vacation? And for vacations of 1 week or more, it is beneficial to ask at least a month ahead for a chance to get approval. Nice, but now the question is, who should I contact for getting vacations approved for engineers? Got it. I found the information that I was looking for. I need to get my vacations approved by Sora. Now again, I would like to find out where this information is coming from. By clicking on the button, I can see the highlighted fragment that shows me the source. And by clicking on the snippet, I can also see the document in Squirrel's enterprise search. And finally, I can also navigate to the original document in our internal wiki by clicking on the title. Isn't it amazing to see all of this cool tech working on your own data? Since all of this is already available as part of the Squirrel platform, you can easily go and integrate it into the CRM or other end-user systems of your choice. For a change of pace, let's jump over to the Salesforce integration. Now again, let me give you some context. I'm here in our live internal Salesforce environment and interested into the Salesforce account itself. So let me navigate into that account. Now I can see a call note that Stephen recently logged into the system. Let's open this up. Okay, we see that Stephen noted down the attendees, the discussion points, and the action items of the meeting. So let me navigate into that account where we already have a Squirrel Sales Sites integration working and operational, but unfortunately not enough time to jump into that today. So let's jump straight to the chat where we will find our familiar Squirrelbot in action. Let me just ask a simple question. What was discussed with Livia in the last meeting? Okay, now the answer comes back with the same dialogue-driven and evidence-based process, which means that the answer is based on context, evidence candidate documents from our Salesforce data. As with the previous examples, we can ask follow-up questions in relation to the meeting notes. For example, I would now like to find out if there were any action items mentioned. Sora, please type, were there any action items mentioned? Okay, again, it comes back with the right answer. So in the last meeting with Livia, the action items were to provide a detailed breakdown of expenses by the end of the week and send over information on additional services that the company offers. But now let me also show you the evidence candidates behind it. Sora, if you click on the Show Evidence button, we again see the right snippet highlighted at the top from Stephen's call notes talking about the action item. And of course, like always, I can click on it to navigate to the full document. Now, what you saw is all SpiroBot power integrated into the workbench of your choice in an enterprise-ready fashion. Let me now hand it back over to Dorian for the survey results and the final wrap-up and guidance on how your enterprise can be at the forefront of this very exciting technology using Spiro.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Sarah. I'm still taken aback. Right? Everybody talks about ChatGPT being the answer to all questions. And then if you look at it a bit more closely, A, it's old stuff, only to 21. B, it's not at all on your own data. And you just answered me the question that always bugs me as the CEO of this company. What's the next best action with the customer? What do we need to do to, as an example, engage more closely with that said prospect? And you just showed that all to me integrated in my workbench of choice. It's fantastic. What I want now to do in the few minutes that we do have now is to go and walk you through the survey results. As part of the invitation here, we discussed and offered you a choice of a couple of questions of how you, the audience, does see today the application of such large language models in their enterprise. The survey is still continuing. We will send out the link again if you still want to participate. So what I'm going to present here today is preliminary information, but it gives us already a bit of an idea of where that goes. We asked questions like, are you considering the use of generative AI in your enterprise? How important is it for each part of the company, say in sales, in production, in engineering, in finance, and so on? What use do you see most valuable? Also, where will it be embedded? What will actually drive value in an enterprise context? And what does it take to make it happen? Here, a few of the preliminary answers. We asked that question, are you considering to introduce generative AI technologies into your organization? And I think it's fair to say if you take the already in use, the currently implementing, the considering vendor elements, a large majority of all respondents do say yes. They do consider or are already using bits and pieces of generative AI technologies to support the core functions of their enterprise. Just about 30% say they do not do that yet. And I'm really keep track of that number over the next 2 years. I will make a bet that this will drop significantly over the next 2 years, people who will hold out and not deploy such technologies, because they're hugely applicable in many areas of an enterprise. That was actually the next question. Where do you see this to be of most importance? Where do you see it to support business processes best? We gave a range of answers, but also allowed you, the audience, to add your own views on where this is best used. Of the respondents, and multiple answers were possible, most of you said knowledge management is a prime use case. That is the ability to tap into the vast arrays of know-how, information, data, but insights especially about how to drive business forward. Something that to this day, most enterprises actually do not touch enough, while they invest substantial amounts of money in generating know-how, in training people to actually make this know-how available to colleagues in a company, is still today often a side thought in many enterprises. Generative AI seems to change that. Knowledge management comes by a distance on top. The two additional answers that we received, I was not that much surprised, to be frank. Customer service, there are always today previous versions of sort of bot type interaction patterns available in some cases. Most of those are actually rule-based and probably will be displaced soon, but it makes much sense in a customer service situation to have a more intuitive way, also outside business hours, to allow your customers to interact with you and your support personnel and your support part of your organization. Sales and integration to CRM came on equal position. Again, I think understand this, why this comes high up. All people in sales are often pressured to deliver on a quarterly base. Everything that can help them gauge interest, everything that can help them interact and create more lasting relationships with a customer obviously drives top line revenue. So full understanding that this comes on an equal second footing like customer service, and the demo that my colleague and friend Thomas did, I think, plays to exactly this case. Risk and audit, I was a bit surprised to see that high up, but I probably can understand that. People in compliance and risk and audit, they're often coming in at the post-event and need to effectively deal with what already happened. As such, they need to go through vast volumes of documentation and information, and technologies like this combination of an information retrieval stack with large language models like shown will be instrumental and transformative for their work. We also have been receiving other areas of processes, of parts of a company, such as legal, compliance, innovation, R&D, market intelligence. I already saw a question about an audience member asking, could it be used as an example to automatically track the number of companies in a specific segment or the total turnover of that specific segment, depending on the data that is available. Surely possibilities as well. But takeaway from this point, knowledge management wins it, considered most important, with runner-ups, sales and customer service. We then continued and asked the question about what type of use cases, so how to deploy this technology. Today we showed a bit of chat interaction. We didn't, given the limited amount of time, go much beyond this, and asked where would you see this best deployed. Again, I will focus today on the top three answers that we have been receiving. Search, that ability to improve search significantly, and also the interaction with search results, clearly one, together with question answering chat, what we demoed and showed today. Again, I can relate to that, given sort of the use cases that we have seen before. Comes up absolutely on the top end of how to apply such technology. Third is summarization. All of us in informational heavy lines of work do know about that. Gazillion pages of documents to consume on a daily basis. Not enough time. Would be useful to have a brief summary indicating where to actually spend our time best. So summarization is important. We haven't been showing that today, even though we are already working on this together with our note-taking functionality. So you really go through documents and have an automated summary that you can use as an example for customer interactions or for prospecting or for compliance situations. This is top three use cases. Now, where is it best used within a company? Is it a standalone application and quote, yet another dashboard? Is it actually deeply integrated into your current work processes and workbenches? Not surprisingly, that the 50% mark here is all of the above. That is, this type of technology simply brought into a company as yet another dashboard or a chat interaction pattern is not considered useful. I think the key will be for adoption of these type of technologies and an actual value add to tie it into current work processes and current workbenches. You've seen what my colleague and friend Thomas showed, how we integrate that into Salesforce. And actually this, what we see here in the survey, confirms our hypothesis, starting to do that work already last year, that for this type of technologies to be useful, it needs to be close where you work, where you are, where you spend your time in your company. So the integrated approach is surely the one that is to be taken up here. These were the preliminary results of that survey. Again, in the follow-up to the webinar, we will send out the link. It's still open. We still happily receive answers. Sometime next week, we're going to close and we're going to send out the survey results to all people that have registered as part of a white paper we publish in and around this. Might serve also for you as a bit of a guidance how to think about deploying these type of technologies. With this, we come to the wrap up of today's session already, scheduled at about 45 minutes. We want to have a few minutes for Q&A. And I saw there are quite a number of questions already coming in and probably more over the next few minutes. If you still have questions, add them to the Q&A part of the webinar software. We'll happily go through all of them in detail in a moment. But now, as a bit of a wrap up, what have we seen? We have seen over the past 30 plus minutes a Google moment, a moment where we see that the genie indeed is out of the bottle, and LLMs in those short demo sequences that we have seen is transformative for any company in the way you interact with data, in the way you interact with information, in the way you can drive a conversation, in the way you can automate and significantly improve processes. But we also have seen some of the drawbacks. We also have seen some of the elements that, especially in the enterprise context, one needs to address. We have seen in the public space hallucination, like that James Webb telescope example. We have seen that the publicly available LLMs, obviously ChatGPT, the most famous one, but there are others around, do not cover local content, which is important for any enterprise. And lastly, enterprise security, that is, who is allowed to see what. To simplify this a bit, is the third element that today inhibits the simple straight use of LLMs. That's why we think you need to go beyond that. We need to actually connect that LLM, that large language model, with an integrated information retrieval stack. Because information retrieval, sort of the moniker for classic enterprise search, does all of this. It knows which documents you have. It knows these are your documents, and it knows who is allowed to see what documents. So to plug in an LLM into such an architecture along the lines that my friend and colleague Sarab showed you is, we think, the way forward. To evidence-base every answer. Why is it there? You saw that. To base it on your local content, because only locally uptrained information is relevant information for you in the enterprise context. And then thirdly, in an enterprise context, it is for a number of reasons, regulatory, but also internal compliance, important to have a robust, secure, and respecting local security and privacy concerns architecture that allows you to operate such a space safely. There are a few more things around auditability, data ingestion, and all the rest of it that the classic IRIS stack already has solved. Now, the key use cases that we have seen and have touched upon, indeed, chat, a natural way to interact with data, search, more effective search, the summarization element, we do think are surely top of the list. Where we see options and opportunities also, especially in information-heavy industries, I think about insurance, about banking, about any marketing-related activity, also the creative arts industries and so on. Text generation, also process automation, which is again cross-industry, will be an important point. Lastly, fact-checking. Don't be fooled, it matters. My view on having spent a good chunk of my career in search and enterprise search, you cannot allow hallucination to ever happen for a number of reasons, like liability, like misleading your customers. Fact-checking, this evidence-basing of answers, is key. If you do that, and people like IDC, Gartner, Forrester have been very quick at that, they already publish research in and around that, it is instrumental in pushing a company forward in terms of how likely it is to acquire companies, how to drive profitability, and effectively outsmart and beat the competition. This is a transformative technology. Now, to come to an end, how to start. You see that you can use that online, like on OpenAI or on Google and other of such providers, but how do you take that into your enterprise? Here are a few thoughts on this. Start with a POC. Start with a POC, pick a use case. We come to some that we see a lot of value in. Do a pilot on a limited time fashion, and then go for a full rollout. We have you covered. As part of the follow-up of this webinar, we will present you a white paper, how to implement AI. There is also the fabulous Career Academy that Lauren, who is today our moderator and presenter, puts together and manages, where we put a lot of content at your fingertips to learn how to deploy. Now, if you do a POC, think about 4 weeks. A simple business case with just a data dump. A pilot with then go on maybe 6 to 8 weeks, where you actually test drive it on your user data. And then obviously a full rollout, that takes a bit longer. Normally you need to go a couple of enterprise hoops like security certification and so on. With having done that multiple times, we're happy to help. The key element, I think, is to pick a good use case. The use cases that we see as to get started, as an example, in this generative AI space is with service management. Why? Most of the time, the data involved is rather public. So you don't need to go through the internal hoops of allowing this data to be used in a novel setup because it's anyway public. So it is not restricted. You can make immediate use of that in conjunction with your existing service and support systems. Another one, and we've seen that it came out on top of the survey, is a KM portal. It's internal data, say around sales or client advisory, employee onboarding. That indeed, in terms of the value add, is probably one of the breakthroughs of generative AI. How? Do a small workshop, business shaping, second workshop around functional technical requirements, and then get into the pilot implementation. In the area we are today with the cloud setup, especially the service management piece can be done in a pretty quick fashion. So in conclusion, before coming to the Q&A session, we do really think that a Tame stochastic Parrot, that is this wonderful new technology called large language models, while it in itself is a technological marvel, well combined with a information retrieval stack, together forms a very powerful solution that in turn will have a significant top and bottom line impact on any company. With that, I come to an end and would hand over to you, Lauren, for a Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Dorian. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Thomas, for the insightful introduction and oversight. So we have received a large selection of questions that I'm sure will be of interest and applicable to many sectors and use cases. Now, I think that given the amount of questions that we have received, we'll look at extending this opportunity by 10 minutes. So I hope that you do have time to stay with us for the Q&A session. So let's start with a first one that Dorian has already mentioned previously. Can the bot answer questions like what is the total revenue generated by publicly listed tech companies in 2022? Also list the top 10.
Yes, so I can take this one. So number one, if this information is already included in your private data repository, then we would be able to generate an answer based on the multi-agent approach that we are working on at the moment, where we will convert your question into a series of follow-up questions to retrieve the right answer.
Excellent. Another common question, there's a commonality in the question, is this bot based almost entirely on the OpenAI GPT model?
I can take over this question. So what you currently saw in the demo is that we are using GPT 3.5 Turbo, otherwise known as ChatGPT, which is currently one of the strongest dialogue following models, now surpassed by GPT-4. However, our process is agnostic to the model in the sense that the customer will also be able to integrate a model of their choice into the process.
Thank you. One that also sheds light and poses as interesting, how does Squirrel capture and develop learnings, ideas, and insights?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. How does Squirrel capture and develop learnings, ideas, and insights?
I assume there may be two angles to this question. One may be more technical, how to integrate feedback and the elements from such a question answering session, and maybe the other one, how do we ingest and develop learnings, ideas, and insights, maybe around the product in general. I will take the latter, and maybe Sarb can expand on the first. What you see here today is the team here at Skira. We've been obviously very closely working with a number of customers around the globe listening to sort of their needs, listening to how they see it going. Plus, we are fortunate to have a fantastic team that has been pushing this idea of how to actually connect large language models with an information retrieval stack for some time. And then we have an agile process within the company, how to capture these learnings and ingrain these learnings into future product improvements. That's sort of, if I got that part of the question right, how we would do that on our side. Now, maybe the question was also a bit directed how the tool itself actually captures feedback and integrates feedback into better answer for future reference. So
feedback is also a functionality that is core to our offering back from when we started investing in ML tooling at Squirrel. So even if you put aside the question answering part, everything that we do with the Squirrel's AI Studio, with our search offering, all of these products that we have the possibility to provide feedback from your end users and incorporate that in our development process. We will do the same also for the chatbot that you saw today, where the end feedback from end users will be incorporated to improve the offering.
Mm-hmm. A topic that was touched upon a couple of times that is a concern and consideration for a lot of people is hallucination. So there's a question about hallucination. Is there any logical steps to check hallucination? Answer that is not based on facts given, and how to prevent it before we launch either to internal customers or to external customers?
So I can take over this question. Now, one issue with hallucination is that detecting hallucination, if you do it also with a machine learning model, you can run again in the same problem. So essentially, the only thing that you can do is to have a process in place that allows you to mitigate this issue as good as possible. And that's also what we have in our process, where we have multiple steps that can double check the answer. But ultimately, it will still be the customer's decision if he wants to believe or she wants to believe into the answer or not of the system. What we will do is to supply customers with tools that enable them to make this decision.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. If you go to maybe a divergent angle, looking at the advantageous effects for organizations, is there any evidence or quantification on what kind of operational or strategic advantages search, knowledge management, or advanced AI give to companies?
So there is a body of evidence in and around that, and I believe the truthful answer to this is obviously, as any study, it depends a bit how you ask the questions, what the result of it is. I think the best way to understand why it's worth investing in such technologies is in a time where you, in many industries, I don't know about the question, the person who asked the question, in what industry she or he is, where you have a relatively high level of employee turnover, that is, you have lots of new people. As an example, where you also have an issue around employee retention, often with very narrow timeframes, as an example, for customer service windows until when you need to give an answer. So in such a situation, in KM portal that allows, as an example, to a new person that has never been exposed to what the company internally does or how the company internally talks about product, etc., to have a more natural way to interact with this data without going to other people. That is, to shortcut that onboarding pain for new people. That in itself is massively valuable. And you simply can quantify that in the number of months or at least weeks saved before such a person really is productive. In the case of, as an example, tight KPIs for, as an example, a service team, anything that can help you to reduce wait times, that is immediately measurable. But I'm sure that we keep track of who asked this question, and more than happy to follow up with pointers to studies that lay this out in very specific numeric terms.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll certainly follow up. And so let's take a couple more questions. If you look at the integration of generative AI, maybe into CRM systems, for example, So in Salesforce, can it have access to previous customer communications stored there? Can it use those communications to provide its own answers to similar questions?
Yes, so this is already possible, and part of it you saw in the demo today, where we had a few questions based on the call note that is filed by Stephen, and that we managed to retrieve from the Salesforce and generate the answers and follow-up answers based on that retrieval. So that should already be possible.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe to add, what is interesting, often in an enterprise setup, Salesforce is just one system.
Mm-hmm.
And you have next to that maybe SharePoint, you have next to that maybe a shared email inbox as an example, customer specific. Maybe you have some other internal systems where you keep track of customer interactions or at least customer documentation. I think it's important for the audience to know that has little to do with LLM, but simply with that information retrieval stack that we built, that you can connect to all these systems and expose all of these systems to that single chat question answering or search experience within a workbench. So you're not only tied to what comes out of, say, one particular workbench system like Salesforce, but you actually have an ability to make that the central place of interaction with any type of insight from any type of source.
Yeah, and this was also evident in the demo, but maybe not so clear. So we showed 3 different chat examples, one from external data, one from internal data, and one from Salesforce. All of those 3 examples were running from the same chatbot. So we show it in 3 different places, but you would be able to go to this one single place and ask questions from your Confluence, data sources from Salesforce, and other systems that are possible. Yeah.
Maybe a last question then that relates to that specific topic. So can the LLM engine be fed by internal and external sources, combine the answers, and, for example, give the internal sources a higher rating?
Yes, so that is actually already possible because Skuro is capable of ingesting both internal and external data through its vast library of data connectors. And currently, with the standard Skuro's enterprise search offering, we offer already many strategies to decide the weights for internal versus external documents. What we need to do on top, or what we do on top, is basically expose these information retrieval strategies to the LLM so that they can also benefit from the work that we have done in this domain.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah. So we do have a few more questions, but just in the consciousness of time, unfortunately, we do have to push on. So to be able to answer all of the questions, we will follow up on these with an email and will personally provide answers. So I'd like to move on. What is the next step? So we encourage you to get in touch using the email addresses provided here, or you can head over to go.squirrel.com to get going with your own POC. Our generative AI ebook will be sent to all participants that have been with us here today, as well as a copy of today's webinar recording. You can also access our corporate podcast, Redefining A, on your favorite streaming platform. So I'd just like to wrap up myself. In the last 45 minutes, we have really begun to understand that large language models are ready to redefine the use case possibilities for AI in a B2B setting. And, as Dorian has highlighted, expand the runway on top line growth drastically. As a team here at Squirrel, we are really excited about the possibilities and stay aligned with our values to ensure that we can help you tame your stochastic parrot and benefit from generative AI safely. On behalf of the whole team here at Squirrel, I'd like to thank you for sharing this session with us and for your participation.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.